A fun little backstory is that Jeff Jackson was actually the first person to ask me to run for office back in 2018. And I said no, because I was super pregnant. And then he asked me again every time I saw him after that moment, because it turns out you have to ask women 7 times before they will say yes. And guess how many times you ask men? They're ready to go from the jump. But all of that is to say is if you are someone who likes what I'm doing, Jeff gets some credit, and if you don't like it, you can blame him also. All right, let's kick this off. Yeah, we didn't need a slide for this. The world is absolutely on fire. Our democracy is crumbling, our institutions are in rubble. It's bad. I mean, masked militias funded by our government are murdering citizens in the street. Not a sentence I thought I would say in my America. Not the world I intend to leave to my kids. Not the world I expect you all intend to leave to your families. Next slide. So we gotta do something different, because it's clear that what we've done for the past 40 years has set us up for this moment, not for the future that we want and that we deserve and that we were frankly promised. So I wanna spend a little bit of time actually getting kind of nerdy about the way that we can try some different things. So post loser loss, North Carolina Senate District 37 2024 election for me. My plan was to go back to my day job at the University of Michigan, where I worked as a behavioral scientist studying persuasive communication. Yeah, go blue. Thank you. Also, go Tar Heels. Both of those. That's right. But a funny thing happened. We pulled the data from District 37, and we saw some unexpected trends. One of the things that folks were really worried about when I ran a can't win campaign, just being brutally honest, announcing my loss the day that I filed for office, was that it would be demotivating to voters, that voters would think, if she can't win, why should I show up? And it turned out that voters showed up more than we expected. We had about an increase of 2,000 voters of voter turnout compared to other state Senate districts. We think we flipped about 554 Republican votes to Democrat, which really mattered for our state Supreme Court race. And critically, Iredell County, which is the bulk of District 37, was one of only 8 counties in the state to get bluer. The other 7 were all affected by Helene. And so instead of going back to work, I quit my job and I left my salary and my benefits and all the rest and joy that comes with those, and started something called the Can't Win Victory Fund, where we are taking this one pilot and trying to grow it to see if those results hold up in 2026. Yeah. And I want to tell you a little about how that's going right now. So that is building for the future. That is in alignment with you all to achieve fair maps. Because what we need are candidates in all of these unwinnable districts running hard in a credible way that builds party infrastructure, that builds volunteer strength and capacity, that earns candidates name recognition, and does not require them to sacrifice their social and political capital in a red community. That's one of the benefits of running in a can't win fashion. Through our LLC, the Can't Win Victory Fund worked really hard in candidate recruitment, which closed on December 19th, and we helped recruit 61 state legislative candidates across North Carolina. The team just a little bit is more candidates than the entire rest of the North Carolina recruitment table combined. Some of that is because we have a lot of unwinnable districts. I can't wait for you to meet these folks. They are some of the coolest, most interesting humans you will find. They are people in their community who care, who would never have considered running in a traditional way where they had to go raise a bunch of money and go to fundraisers. But as soon as they found out that their mission in life was to knock doors for Anita Earls, they were like, sign me up. We've got single moms. Our age ranges are 25 to 83. The 25-year-old Reagan Angel up in District 37 just did a TikTok where he's shaving to prove that he has to. And we targeted a different kind of candidate, folks who are comfortable using social media, who are willing to think outside of the box, who want to try messaging and try canvassing in new ways so that we can learn in these unwinnable places what might work in the winnable ones. The future is awesome, but we have to have one. And so Can't Win Victory Fund is like my passion. It's the place that fills me up. It's the team that brings me joy. But it became clear that 2030 was too far away. And if we are going to get to the point to even think about having fair maps, we have to have change right now. And so on January 21st of 2025, I woke up and I was like, what the are we going to do? And started thinking about how we could disrupt our rigged system and have an impact as quickly as possible. Yeah, so I became a Republican, not a real one. Next slide, please. I saw my mom last night and she was like, we just didn't know for a while there, sweet pea. And it's because of our gerrymandered maps. My values haven't changed. I'm still the raging liberal that I always was. I still think that we should have universal health care. Yes. I think we should have free child care. I think that we should have no income tax for the first $100,000 that comes into your bank account. And once you make $1 million a year, you're gonna pay a lot of tax. So, and that's, tax cuts are super Republican. Next slide, please. So, thank you for that. This is my zone. So basically what's going on, and when I finally decided I was actually going to challenge Tim Moore in the Congressional District 14 Republican primary, was when our freaking state legislature sold out our state again, just so that Phil Berger could get a Trump endorsement and win his primary, which he probably won't do anyway, so... they rigged our congressional map, like mid-decade redistricting, rammed it through. I think there were something like 12,000 public comments and 99.9% of them were opposed. Don't care, because they don't have to, because the maps are drawn so that they don't have to listen to us to keep their jobs, and that, frankly, is bullshit. I'm not bleeping that one. Next slide, please. I don't think this room needs it, but just in case you're like, what's gerrymandering? It's when politicians draw their voting districts and choose their voters to ensure that they can keep their power, instead of voters having the power to choose their politicians. It's a rigged map. It started with this little guy down here, Elbridge Gerry, spelled Gerry. He was the governor of Massachusetts, and he gerrymandered Boston in order to secure a victory for the Jeffersonian Republicans back in 1812. Folks thought that his district that was so strange looking looked like a salamander. It does not, but that's what they thought, and so they slammed his name, Gary, together with salamander and got gerrymander, and then through the years we have mispronounced it, and now we've got gerrymander. A thing worth noting is that in 1813, the Federalists broke his maps, and gerrymandering was declared dead. Too bad. So it's possible, and people have not liked gerrymandering since 1812, and yet we still have it, which is just another example of how voters don't have the power that they deserve. Next slide, please. Gerrymandering is bad for just a whole bunch of reasons, not just its name being dumb, but also because this is how you end up with polarizing policies, because all of a sudden you have elected officials who care more about avoiding a primary than they do about winning a general. The general is secured for them by the map makers, and they become very concerned about being primaried from the edge of their party. So Tim Moore worries a lot about being primaried from the right. And so you start seeing officials pass increasingly polarized policy in order to appease the folks they think will show out in the primary. You get corrupt politicians, again like Timmy, because it's not easy to hold them accountable. It's really fun to call him Timmy. I highly recommend that all of you start doing that. And you have leaders with no accountability, and the primary is the real election. And that is how I ended up in the Republican primary, because voters deserve a choice. And the Republican primary was the only place that the real choice existed, and we have to win now, and they need to be afraid of us. My dream is that I get enough votes to scare the shit out of every congressperson in DC and have them wondering, when are they coming for me? Next slide. We already did this one. Next slide. Okay, so that's like my fired up fight back reason, but now's the really nerdy part. There's another reason that I want to try this, and this is like an experiment we're doing. Next slide, please. There's a fair chunk of our country that's currently experiencing an identity crisis. Back during COVID, we were not able to gather in geographic community like we always had, like we were programmed to through evolution, which is a thing. Just even though I'm a Republican, that's real. So people went online. And the way the internet is constructed is it's designed to funnel you into common groups. It wants you to keep seeing what you like, so you'll buy the things that show up in that place. It sorts us and puts us in echo chambers. And people lived in those echo chambers for years, especially white men. Young white men. And so that becomes a part of your identity, because community and identity are impossibly linked. They have to be. Community is necessary for our survival. But we also have values. Maybe you're religious. Maybe you're somebody who cares about kids or honesty or the law or America. So we've got a fair number of people right now who have this tension between their identity, this like MAGA conservative identity, and those are their social groups, those are their safe spaces, and their values. Next slide, please. Who's seen Inside Out?
Yo.
Yes. I asked that question at the Pines, and I love the Pines up in Davidson. It's their retirement community. Not enough hands were raised, and this didn't make sense, so I'm really glad. So in Inside Out, there's a preteen girl named Riley, and it's basically like a trip inside her brain, and she is run by her 5 emotions: joy, sadness, fear, disgust, and anger. What many people don't know is that Inside Out is actually based on real brain science. It's actually how our brains work, and that is super cool and very handy for us. In this picture, you can see behind her feelings these islands of personality. And you see we've got like MAGA Island over there for our example. Because that is essentially what happened to a lot of folks, is that they incorporated this politics into their core identity. Next slide, please. And now they've got one identity in conflict with these others. Next slide, please. And losing part of your identity is really painful. It can feel like trauma, because it kind of is. It's why teenagers are total assholes. Next slide, please. So people try really, really hard to avoid these identity crises. They will accept any explanation that allows them to keep their values and their identity without having to reconcile between the two. So if you wonder why misinformation is so easily accepted, some of it is because it allows people to stay in the space where they are now without having to do this hard thing. That's happening in politics. Next slide, please. And we have some data that shows us that this like party political identity is influencing how people react to things. Next slide, please. Because it turns out we are not as polarized as you might think. When you take party out of it, 74% of Americans support safe storage laws. 79% think that immigration is good for the country. 80% like childhood vaccines. 60%, and that number is getting higher, think that tariffs are negative for the economy. We've got 63% of Americans who think that we should raise taxes on large businesses and corporations, and 69%, the best of the numbers, think that gerrymandering should be illegal. We agree. So why why don't we have these policies? Why don't we have laws that reflect this agreement? It's because folks are avoiding this identity crisis, and we don't have maps that allow us to hold our leaders accountable. Next slide, please. So part of this Republican thing that I'm doing, my phase, as my mom calls it, she was lying, she is still not fine. But I love her and appreciate that she's trying. What if instead of asking people to change the party they're voting for, because the way they vote by party is wrapped up in their identity, and I don't think the Democratic Party should be in the business of doing therapy on people. So what if we just stopped that and gave them a choice that let them say, I voted Republican my whole life, but then voted for progressive policies? I don't know what's gonna happen. I genuinely don't, but that is the experiment that we're doing. We are trying to see if you take party out of it, if you take this identity piece and you let people stay, like keep avoiding the stuff they don't wanna deal with. I mean, it's coming for them someday, for sure. But what if right now we gave them a choice that they could actually make? And what if primary voter turnout was so low that it was actually possible to win that way? Next slide, please. Here's Timmy. So what you see here, in District 14, there are 544,000 registered voters. This is the 2024 primary, which had President Trump and, I hate that, and Nikki Haley on the ballot. And he still only got 10% of all registered voters to vote for him in the primary. 10% of voters chose who is representing 544,000. That's insane. It's just a terrible way of doing things. But it's also an opportunity. Next slide, please. So this is the part my mom does like, because she was a high school math teacher for her entire career. And I feel like I have to go through this with everyone, because the only way that this kind of disruption makes sense is if it can actually have a positive outcome. We don't want to disrupt for disruption's sake. We want to disrupt with purpose. Next slide, please. So here's how it works out. 544,000 registered voters in the district. Unaffiliated and Republican voters can pull a Republican ballot, which will have me and Timmy on it. There are 400,000 of them. The district is majority unaffiliated, just like North Carolina. If we guesstimate 15% voter turnout, which is like kind of middle of the road for a midterm primary, that's 60,000 votes that will be cast in the Republican primary. Divide it by 2 and add 1, and I need 30,001 votes to win out of 544,000 registered voters in the entire district.
Let's go!
Right? And if we fantasize for a moment that I pull this off, we have flipped a seat. Because it doesn't matter what letter is next to my name, we are values aligned. I am not going to allow a Republican Speaker of the House. That's dumb. Look where that got us. It is a way to right now infuse progressive policies into our governing bodies while also making them scared of us, which is how elected officials are supposed to feel. I'm so sorry. I know. Yeah, okay. Because they should be afraid of losing their jobs because they don't serve us. That feels like the easiest thing to say. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a blank slide because this is where I'm going to tell you we're actually doing a whole bunch of other experiments within this campaign that will hopefully help us win in November with our candidates won't win, that's the whole point. But Justice Earls in those competitive districts, Roy Cooper, who will probably be fine without us, but we really need him to win, so we'll help anyway. We are doing a new method of voter outreach that we call LuLaRoe for Democracy. It's a multi-level marketing scheme, but without money. We'll see if that's enough motivation. And we're running that experiment and we're keeping data on it. And if it works, it's a way for people to plug in from across the country and have actual impact on our voter turnout in these competitive places. So, and that's just one example. Like, there's so many. Next slide, please. February 6th is passed, so if you're a Democrat, you can't vote for me, but you can vote in the District 14 Democratic primary, and you should do that. And if you want to know who I would pick, ask me when I am not standing behind a microphone. If you're an unaffiliated voter, or you know unaffiliated voters, ask them to pull a Republican ballot and vote for me starting on February 12th. If they would just do it on February 12th so that we don't have to track them down to do it, that would be ideal. And then March 3rd is Election Day. Next slide. This is redundant. Keep going. Yes, please. Thank you. So this is a quote from my time at UNC School of Public Health that all of my classmates and I used a lot, which is, "We arrive together or not at all." This doesn't work if we leave people behind. We have an opportunity to build a democracy that is closer to something that could work for everyone. We've never had a democracy that can work for everyone. And the choices we're making right now in 2026, in 2028, and in 2030, the people we are electing are the ones who will have a seat at the table as a new version of democracy is built. And so when you are choosing at the ballot box, you have to feel like that is a person who will make good decisions for where we should go next. And I don't feel that way enough sometimes. But we have some really good ones this time. The story I'm gonna leave you with, I guess I get to answer some of your questions too, that's exciting. The story I'm gonna leave you with is that I was doing this presentation at an event called Pop Tech, and I was the first presenter of the day, and I think this room can handle it. I kicked off my presentation with a dick joke, because that's who I am. And it was a funny one. And then I was immediately followed by the former president of Tibet living in exile in Boston, who was talking about wars for water. I clearly misunderstood the gravity in that room. And so and his name is Lobsang Sangay, he's amazing. When I saw him later that night, I basically apologized for telling a dirty joke in front of the former president of Tibet. And he was like, "No, it was funny, it's fine." But he gave me a pep talk, and I want to share that pep talk with you because it applies to all of us. He said, "People always ask me the wrong question. They ask me when Tibet will be free." He's like, "That's not in my control, and I don't know." So the real question is, what can I do today to make sure Tibet is ready when it can be free? Right. Yes, right, this man. And he said, basically, we're doing the same thing. Because we don't know when we'll get fair maps. We don't know when democracy will be what it should be. We don't know when this authoritarian regime will fall. But we do wake up every day and ask what we can do to make sure that North Carolina is ready when that moment comes. He said, all you can do is pick up the torch that only you can carry, and you carry it as far as you can for as long as you can. And if other people want to carry their torches with you, that's great, but it really doesn't matter if they carry their torches alongside you or not. As long as you are picking up a torch and you are walking in a direction, you are doing the work that needs to be done. And so, I know, he's brilliant. And I feel so much like, Carolyn, this is what you were just saying, whether it's a lane or a torch, just pick up your torch. So many of you have already done it. And just walk the direction that feels true to you, and we will get there. Thank you all for having me.
Hello, great talk, by the way.
Thank you.
One quick question. If you're running as a Republican, aren't there things the Republican Party, knowing who you are, can prevent you from doing that?
So North Carolina is pretty interesting in this way. Every state has its own special way that you get on the ballot. Something that is actually saving us right now is that our election systems and our method of electing people is unique to each state, so it's decentralized. In North Carolina, literally all you have to do to get on the ballot is be a member of that party for more than 90 days and pay your money. So I did that. That's not true everywhere. But yeah. I know you.
Hey, Kate.
Hi.
How are you? Kimberly Owens, Charlotte City Council. I'm curious if you can describe the process when you do beat Timmy. What does that look like between you and whoever is the Democratic candidate? Can you give us some sense of that? Because I think we're being asked to contribute to the Democratic candidates right now.
Yeah.
And people want to understand how that plays out.
Yeah. So this is a tricky one, not for me, but for the Democratic Party. So for me, once I beat Timmy, we've done the job, right? Because he can't run again. North Carolina has strict sore loser laws. It's not a New York situation. There's no Tim Moore write-in campaign. It's possible that the GOP would spend a ton of money on a write-in campaign for someone else, in which case I would work very hard to tear that person apart, as is my passion. But if it is truly me versus a qualified Democrat, like, I want to help these candidates. So on March 4th, that's where my attention and focus go. And as long as we flip a seat and there's someone with progressive policies in their back pocket sitting in Congress on January whatever, 4th, 5th, I'm happy. That does not need to be me. I'm not going to drop out because I do think the R does some work, and we don't want to leave a race without a Republican in it in an extremely red district. That does open us up to some real problems with a write-in campaign, but I'm not going to start like going nuts with debates against the Democratic candidate. Like, well, we should just be standing there and saying like, I agree with you. Like, that's the job. There's the thing that I think is really underlying a lot of the more Democratic establishment's discomfort with my run is money. 2025 was a tough fundraising year. If any of you work in the nonprofit space, you experienced that. And that was true for NCDP, it was true for the Can't Win Victory Fund, and I think there is a perception that my campaign has just raised a shit ton of money. And if you pull the FEC filings, you will discover that is not true. Like, nowhere close. We have raised about $20,000, and I kind of think that's what we should be doing. Like, campaigns cost an insane amount of money, and we are doing an experiment, and I think that I'm carrying a message that is interesting enough to walk on its own and not require a ton of paid digital media, which is where most of the money goes these days, is into TV ads. We don't need that. We get that for free because the story is interesting, because we understand how earned media works. It's not to say I won't take your money. I will absolutely take your money. But I think the Democratic Party was really afraid and remains really afraid that somehow my fundraising efforts are going to undermine theirs. I don't think that scarcity mindset helps us. I also don't think that donors belong to anyone, and I'm kind of, frankly, frustrated with the idea that they do. You know, some people have feelings about it. I hope that they work that through with their therapist. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I was wondering if you could speak about some of your strategies, given the fact you have limited resources, and what can you learn from Zoran Mandavi's campaign? Do you have some spearhead strategies up your sleeve that you're willing to disclose now, or do you prefer to keep them quiet?
We're a pretty open book. It turns out that like Timmy, has not really had to run for office ever, so he's extremely bad at it. And that's very handy. That is a part of the strategy. So I sat down with Joe Bruno, did this 8-minute long interview where I talk about how corrupt Tim is, and I talk about how I'm gonna cut everybody's taxes, and then Tim posts it to his Facebook page in all caps. It says, "Y'all gotta watch this." So, I mean, some of the strategy is leaning into the fact that they don't know how to run for office because they've never had to do it. We use humor a lot, social media. I have worked really hard since my state senate run to cultivate positive relationships with online content creators, both within the state and across the country. And that is where people are motivated and where they learn about campaigns. I did a meet and greet in Belmont, one of the nights this week. Wednesday? Thursday. Emma says Thursday. And we scheduled it 2 days in advance because of the snow and we weren't sure. And I put it up on social media. And there are so many unaffiliated voters that are hungry for something different that we had like a 50-person turnout and the brewery was frustrated with us, although also stuck around to listen, just on word of mouth. So part of it is running, like what Mom Donnie did and what we're trying to emulate and what he did and what we are inspired by is rooting the campaign in the people and in the people who don't feel represented, especially unaffiliated voters. A lot of our progressive unaffiliated voters are not feeling super welcome in the Democratic Party right now, and that's a thing that I hope the party is working on. I know that that's like a mixed bag, and they're welcome sometimes and not others. But I think in a lot of ways this campaign has become a home for them, similar to Mom Donnie's. He also uses the word you a lot, and this is like some free persuasive comms for y'all. I've gotten to know a lot of very cool people, and one of them is Anat Shenker-Osorio. Yeah, that's right. She's another cool one. And we were having a conversation one day, and she said, the word we has 4 different definitions. And the word you has 1 definition. And the Democratic Party, in order to be inclusive, which is a beautiful idea and a wonderful thing to want to be, says our and we and together a lot. But people don't necessarily know that that includes them. And so Mom Donnie said, for a New York you can afford. People know exactly who you're talking about then. So most of our language, I just did it, on the team is rooted in the word you.
Do you know any other good dick jokes that could be used?
I have a whole repertoire. Humor is our other strategy. There's my buddy Woodson. Hi, Woodson. What's up?